Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. Well, today was all the release. The Snyder Cut fandom came out, and we celebrated Man of Steel at the same time as releasing the Snyder Cut. A lot of tweets came out. I retweeted. I even changed my picture for today to the SC Snyder Cut. I think it was Ramesh who actually made that. I'm sorry if I was wrong about that, but so that happened today, and that was to pretty good effect. A lot of people came out, a lot of people retweeted, and we made a couple of things. But before we get into that, James Wan got his own Funko Pop. Yeah, when did Zack Snyder get his own Funko Pop, right? So James Wan got his own Funko Pop, and he decided to take a picture of it. But we're looking at the Funko Pop, right? Most of us are going to be looking at Funko Pop, but a lot of us are going to be looking at behind the Funko Pop, what it looks like it's a scene from Aquaman. Who is that? Is that some Atlantean fighting Aquaman, or is Aquaman fighting Orm? What's going on there? It is a picture. It's a battle in the water. It gets you a little bit more excited. He's working on it right now. There's gonna be a trailer at San Diego Comic-Con, so there's super extra things to be very excited for Aquaman that's coming out, and I can't wait to see what's in store. I can't wait to see the only DCEU movie that's coming out this year, unless we get the Snyder Cut. But it's still the only official right now DCEU movie coming out this year, unless you call Teen Titans Go a DC. No, that's a DC film, but it's a DC cartoon. So that is awesome and interesting. And a few other things where the news sites were picking up was about Mario Robles. He was on El Fanboy Cast and podcast, and he talked about how there's going to be an announcement for Man of Steel 2 soon. There's the Batman movie is an interesting one. These are just rumors per se, and maybe according to the sources or whatever, but it's basically saying that Batman from the DC Dark, they're going to test those waters out to see which one is which Batman they're going to go with, I think. Is that what he's trying to say? I got to read that further. But so that is interesting. I haven't had a chance to actually listen to it, but I see that Heroic Hollywood picks up on those things and decides to tweet that out. And so, but what gets me is the Superman movie. Possibly, and what they're gonna do with Batman. The Batman one's interesting. That means they're gonna be playing it by ear again, waiting for what's gonna happen, making sure this movie works out. If this movie works out, then they'll do more, or vice versa. So I don't know. It's kind of like that's his guess, I guess. So we're not really sure which direction or they're gonna go. But for sure, I mean, San Diego Comic-Con's gotta say something. It's gotta clear up some things, clarify some movies and what directions are they gonna go. If not, they will still be guessing throughout the year until next San Diego Comic-Con. So hopefully we get some answers real soon, like next month, like literally next month, the same time from now. It's 1 month away. Oh my God, I can't wait for San Diego Comic-Con. I want to get into a kind of a follow-up from yesterday's video about the Donner, Richard Donner, saying that he said that he didn't want his name on the Donner cut, and about the Final Cut Matters. Well, I got a tweet from a gentleman named Alex Lobo at Geek Law Grad. He is getting into, I think he is a lawyer. No, not yet. He is not a licensed lawyer, but he's going into it, so he knows a lot about this law stuff. So he said, here's an article going over Final Cut rights, legally speaking. Speaking, of course, with my background, I believe Zack Snyder contract didn't grant him Final Cut rights. I believe the studio used a majority of his photography for JL, hence why Joss Whedon wasn't attached. So he posts this article from BBC, director versus studio, who should have Final Cut. And when you read this article, and I'll link it down in the description, it goes into a little bit details on different directors, auteur directors, even, and famous directors like Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, who had probably had more Final Cut rights to it, while these auteur directors like Darren Aronofsky probably didn't have director rights. They always clashing with the studio, which is something similar to what Zack Snyder is. So it's possible maybe he didn't have the Final Cut rights to whatever came out. But I'm wondering if, even though if he didn't have Final Cut rights, he didn't watch it though. So is there something with that? Maybe someone could explain that as well for people who are in law and know about film. I know I have comments from the other video. I have not gotten time to look at it, but I will, truly will, this weekend, or possibly maybe even read some if there's some comments. If something happens tomorrow, then something happens tomorrow. But if nothing happens tomorrow, then I'll look forward to that. Also, my Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom movie review, because I'm going to do that. But this is an interesting article. I'll link in the description. Take a look at it about Final Cut rights. We could all learn from something. We're always learning new things. But with the whole release the Snyder Cut thing today, which was made quite a bit of noise, and it actually reached 2 publications. One is Metro.uk, and they actually had an article about the release of Snyder Cut, about and the whole thing, how the fandom has reached out to AT&T Cares and things like that. There's also another one from The Nerdist, which is pretty big in my opinion in terms of the fandom world. So they actually did Jessica Chobot did a video about release the Snyder Cut movement that we were doing, and then calling us harassing AT&T Cares, and I know in terms of how they want to say it and things like that, for the most part, it looked like people were just begging AT&T Cares. It seemed mostly positive in any site. But my thing is that she is right. The AT&T Care people don't care about releases Snyder Cut. But like I said, that wasn't the reason why people did that. The reason why a lot of them probably did that, and maybe they were thinking they cared, but for me, it's to drive attention. And drive attention it did, because the Nerdist did pick it up, and sort of as a lot of other sites. They also were started to look into it further with Jay Oliva or Leva, and seeing how much that the cut is actually existed. So and that's their own, the Nerdist's own opinion anyway. So we'll see what happens if the Snyder Cut does come out. Then maybe they'll have to change their opinions, change what they had to say about that. But in any case, the message is out there. They're picking up on it, and hopefully more sites, maybe even the larger mainstream media sites, as we go through these couple weeks leading up to San Diego Comic-Con, maybe they'll start picking up on it. Who knows? But like I said, continue to make noise, positive noise. Even though they're going to say it's negative noise, it's still positive in some rights. There is a new at Warner Media Group. So I've been starting to do that as well. That Warner Media is the new name for Time Warner. It's no longer Time Warner. It's called Warner Media Group. So if you wanted to add that to the Twitter, that's well, that's fine. I think more noise is the better. That's my opinion, and to show that there is a content out there that AT&T could capitalize on if they see that such a huge following on it. If it's making the news, it's making the news. I mean, if it's making the news, there's got to be something they're going to look into it. I believe they're already looking at it, but if we keep it up, it'll keep them fresh in their minds all the time. And for me, it only took maybe a few minutes to tweet something, and I kept retweeting and tweeting, but at the same time, it's like celebrating for the fandom in any case. So, but I do what I can. But speaking of the Justice League Cup, interestingly enough, Scanline, a VFX company, decided to release their reel today, and John picked that up on it. Aaron Slightly, I can't say your John. He's part of DC Film Hub. I'm gonna try to find his name here. Hold on, real quick. But he picked up on it, and he it was on Vimeo, I think. Was it on Vimeo? Yeah. And then so he put it on YouTube under his channel, and I'll link to his channel on YouTube. And it actually has, all he did was change the music from the Danny Elfman Heroes, from the Justice League soundtrack, to the to Batman v Superman soundtrack. So he just made it that because it, but he did do that. And let's see, what is this? That's my thought, right? But he did do that, so everybody picked up on it, and a lot of people are looking through the scenes and stuff, and for one first glance is like, okay, this is the Justice League, okay, this is just Scanline VFX, they're just trying to, this is their portfolio, that's why they're releasing a reel, which is true, for the most part, that they worked on Justice League and did things like that. People started picking up on the colors and the color grading. I don't think I want to put that here, because I'm not sure if it's copyrighted, and I don't want to get taken down, but there is quite a bit of scenes. So there's some additional scenes, one of after Wonder Woman killing a parademon, and then she actually kind of smirks, which is, I thought it was kind of cool. They should have kept that in there. In the movie, it's felt like she was like very worried and things like that, but I think that little cockiness of throwing her head like she's excited actually is pretty awesome, because it goes in line with Batman v Superman when she got thrown down by Doomsday and she smiled, like, because she enjoys the fight, which is like a Wonder Woman thing. So I wish they had kept that in there, because that's her character, even though it's very dangerous and it's scary and maybe they will lose. She smiles because she enjoys the fight. She's a little bit of that cockiness into her, and I love that. There's a little bit more of the Batman fighting parademon where he drops down, extended scenes. There's even a part where Aquaman saves him by hitting the water. You see a shot from far away, and you see Wonder Woman running away, that kind of stuff. But the most important thing, though, is the color grading, the way it's lit, and how it's not overly bright. It actually makes Steppenwolf better. The CG hiding hiding the not good parts of the CG, and also making Cyborg a little bit more looking real, like he's actually there instead of actually a CG character. So they did stuff like that. There's also the part where it's very prominent, where in Superman memorial fight scene where Henry Cavill Superman, he turns his head. It's much more darker in the VFX reel than in the theatrical cut, which is interesting, because what we initially thought is that it's weird in the Superman memorial scene because all the buildings are lit up, but it looks like the time of day would be difficult for that to happen. So we assume it's supposed to be at night. The original cut's supposed to be at night, and we know because Flash was doing that Flash thing in the trailer, and it looked like nighttime. So there's a little bit of that. There's also more of the Batman scenes, how it's lit and things, and the color grading, as like I already said. And so it's very intriguing and interesting stuff. And from what I get from it, like, some people are like, are they working on it now? Is that what's going on? They're still editing it. They're still color grading it. And this is just release of their reel today of all days. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I should be excited or not excited, because a lot of those scenes are still Joss Whedon scenes. So, and they use the Danny Elfman music. So if they are, this is the thing, if they are actually working on it now, including those scenes and stuff, and they're doing stuff, but it's still Joss Whedon, still Danny Elfman, that means this is not the Snyder cut they're working on, but possibly the extended cut. If this is them working at all, or they just cleaned up some scenes that they've worked on as a VFX company, and this is just their portfolio reel, and they want to make their portfolio look better, because if they released it washed out, maybe some other studios were like, well, that didn't look too good, you know, maybe we won't hire that VFX company. And so that's why they made those scenes better, the scenes that they worked on, and to be better for their portfolio. Of course, tinfoil hat. Where's my tinfoil hat? Someone threw it away. But tinfoil hat is that maybe they are working on something, and I hope it's not just an extended cut of the theatrical version. We all prefer, well, most of us prefer the Snyder cut in all its glory, and hopefully there's something working on with that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm really, it's looking through that. It's such a shame how much it just reminds you of what we've seen earlier, what they've done with it, and it's such a shame to see Zack Snyder's work butchered into that effect, and still, you know, putting his name on his work without putting the name of the person who actually did that, you know, who actually did the butchery. And and we had some conversations today with fans where, well, maybe the director's cut, and I gotta look into this, and maybe someone who can post later on, but how much a director's credit is given to, because the amount of percentage of his work is in the film is like over, what, 60% or something like that, or is it over 30 something? I don't know. And so I'm wondering, well, what if Joss Whedon reshot the scenes that Zack Snyder shot in the same fashion, but you can tell that he didn't shoot it? Does that mean that overrides Zack Snyder's shot? And when you say, like, Zack Snyder directed, so, you know, over 60, I just threw the number out, over 60% of the film, do you mean what was actually seen in the theaters, or what was the entire production? Because that could mean anything, right? I mean, I'm not sure, and I would definitely have to read more back, and going back to the DGA site to actually read into that. But these are the questions that are coming up to see, maybe just to think about how, if Zack Snyder wanted to release his cut, how who could go about by doing that, and what type of, you know, I'd say legal reasons or whatever reasons he could bring up to change the narrative or change the studio's mind, saying, you know, you're right. Besides the point that this could actually make a little bit more money for the studios, especially if they go straight digital or thing like that. But besides that, like, if there was some kind of precedent that he could actually do that, judging about what he's been, you know, all the cut has happened, judging on what transpired, judging about what Joss Whedon had done, does he have some kind of right to say that's not the cut that should have been released without my approval, something like that, even though there's maybe no final cut rights, but maybe they bypassed him, I don't know, and I don't know. So that is interesting, and it's very you know, we're not hearing anything. It is still very silent on that front. The only people telling us that it doesn't, well, still telling us it doesn't exist, are other bloggers and people who are not caught up to what's going on, online sources and things like that. I mean, most of the narrative now should be it does exist. It's just that it's not going to get released. Some even say it's going to be worse than what we saw in the theater. Well, that could be true, but, you know, I highly doubt it. But we won't know until we actually see it, right? We won't know. So anyway, that is it. That is it for today. Oh yeah, actually one more thing. I wanted to give a shout out to Geraldo Cortez. He tweeted at me, or verilled me, and he did another. He did that whole Flash theme, his own interpretation of Flash theme that that he wanted for Justice League. He did one for Cyborg, and it is pretty good. It's pretty good. It starts off with, it's called Plight and Flight of the Cyborg, and you actually feel that. And, you know, he puts pictures out so he kind of helps you with that interpretation and understanding the music. But you do feel the sense of dread, you do feel a sense of tragedy and a little bit of sadness and horror at the same time of being turned into cyborg, but then it uplifts. There's an uplifting feel to it towards the end, heroic even, and I think it works really cool, really fantastic. If that's anything close to what a cyborg theme could be, I could totally hear that, see that happening, just like how he did with the Flash. You feel that urgency, that quickness for that music. Even though, you know, the Danny Elfman's Flash theme wasn't too bad. And it's probably one of the better things out of that soundtrack. But any case, check it out, Geraldo Cortez. I'll link his music into the description below. And that's it for tonight. Aloha Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. And then if you have time, please listen to the Zod Writer Show. I did a podcast with him. I also did a podcast with Dave the Film Junkie. Listen to those as well. And hopefully we hear something tomorrow. If not, we'll just keep on fighting. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.